Okay, let's keep going here. So I'm going to walk a bit, just simply because I got to stop right up there anyway. So we are now here at Raith, and as I mentioned earlier, there were two stations here because there was a station on the Grand Trunk Pacific Canadian National, and then there was one on the Canadian Pacific. This is still a station on the Canadian Pacific. This is actually where the Canadian Pacific double track, so Canadian Pacific used to have a double track all the way to Winnipeg. They ripped that up. I can't even remember how long ago, but basically now the double track basically runs from Raith to Thunder Bay, or Thunder Bay to Raith, I guess, if you're going the proper railway direction. So as I'm going to mention, this was not the original name for this station. This was originally known as Dexter. And so you can see there's a few little homes here. And you can see again some of the vestiges of the railway presence. You can see mountains of ties here hanging around. I'm guessing that building over there probably had something to do with the railway line, because you can see it's next to the pole there, and basically you can see that there was a power hookup, or as we like to say here in Canada, hydro. We don't call it electricity, it's the hydro pole. So our first point of interest here. So momentarily here, I'm going to be, once we get to the station, I'll show you a map. So basically what we have here, okay, you just wait here, Loon. She's probably gonna like freak out because I'm leaving her behind. So essentially what we have here, this is the site of the water tank here at Dexter / Raith. And so basically you can see the base part of it. I'm kind of interested because it looks different. I'm pretty sure, let me grab the notes here. I want to say this was an original water tank here. So as it turns out, this is not the site of the water tank. I was mistaken. I appreciate the help from Randy in terms of finding out exactly what this is. So you'll notice the H pole here in the back. So basically this was the site of a telecommunications repeater building that was associated with the radio control of the line. So this pad again was nothing to do with the water tank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to where I think the site of the water tank is, and then we'll pick things up from there. So there was a bit of a mystery associated where the water tank was. We're going to see if we can find it. There's a little issue here, and I'm going to talk about that issue momentarily. So we were here in September. And what I did was I ended up spending, I would say, over an hour walking back and forth here trying to find the water tank. I had the metal detector. I could not find anything. I was quite frustrated. So what I did was when I went home, I took a look at the topographic map. So the water tank is shown. Now the problem is it shows two water tanks because it shows one on the Canadian National Line and one on the Canadian Pacific Line on the 1959 topographic map. So what I did was I also decided to check the 1914 map that I have of the yard here. And so what it does is it shows the tank about a third of the way up. There's a creek that's just over there, and then the station is there, and it shows the creek here. So I came back here in October, and I thought I found where the tank was located. Now the problem is that when we were here in October, I think that was the log that I threw across here because I just had my rubber boots, and I walked across here and I felt something underneath the water here, and now I'm trying to figure out if this in fact is the tank. So I have my waders on. There definitely is something underneath here. There's definitely wood underneath here. And so what tipped me off to kind of look further out from the grade was that when you look at other places, like Larson and Oscar, the water tank is considerably out from the grade. Well, there's definitely some wood under here. Like there's some sawn wood here. Right underneath here. Hope you can see that. Oh my God, dog. You are gonna smell fantastic on the ride home. Look at the boards that are coming up. I just got my watch all wet. Yeah, look at that. And there's nails in it. There's a bowl. Yeah, and all kinds of boards here. Okay. Okay. There had to be something here. Is that a rock or is that concrete? I wonder if this is, I wonder what that is. I wonder if that's a gasket of some sort for the pipes. Okay, enough for this fun. Water tank right here. So right here, and again, once we get to the station up here, where the station was, I'm going to show you. So right here was the start of the siding. So originally there was one set of siding, so one set of passing tracks, and then there was some additional tracks that were added, and I'll talk about that once we get up to where the station was. So again, you can see the Canadian Pacific Kansas City over on the other side. The mountains of ties that are there. So you can see how the poles continue over here. And this was, and I'll show you some maps. We're very fortunate we actually have quite a number of maps of this area. This is where the station was located. So according to one of the early maps, there was actually a telegraph office and then there was the station. Let's pull in here. Let's drop this down. Luna, you stay there. I'm just right here. You can actually see, I don't know if this would have been from the station, but there's a chair here. So this would have been the site of the station. And so let's talk a little. Oh, Luna, I'm just right here. Okay, don't hang on to your potato there. All right, so as I mentioned, Raith was originally named Dexter, and we're not quite sure why it was called Dexter because as we've pointed out on previous episodes, the Grand Trunk Pacific used an alphabetical naming system. So using Dexter did not fall into the pattern. So the station, the two stations to the east are Griff and then Horn. So this should have been I, but it wasn't. And so this is out of order, and actually the next one's out of order too, because Linkle is out of order. So not sure why it was called Dexter. One of the hypotheses is that it was, the name was copied from the Canadian Pacific Station, which was there basically because they were side by side using the same name. The name was changed to Raith in late 1910 or early 1911, somewhere in there. I don't know exactly the time frame, but I know that it was in the latter part of 1910 or in early 1911. It could have been, again, that Canadian Pacific decided to change the name of their station. Again, we don't have all of the details for that. So right here where we're standing was a Grand Trunk Type E station. See, there's actually a bit of a depression in here, down here. Trying to see what I'm stepping on here. There's actually, it looks like a piece of wood in there. So this, the station here was added in 1911. Again, there was a water tank located here, along with a Y. Now, a big change happened in 1915, as we mentioned in the, okay, Luna, just relax, in the previous segment, because in 1915, when this became part of the Canadian Government Railways, what they did was they split the line into two subdivisions. The Fort William, which ran from Fort William to Raith, and then the Raith, which ran from Raith to what originally was Graham, which is now Sioux Lookout, Ontario, okay? And so when they did that, they added coal facilities, and we're gonna go take a look at the coal facility, or where it was after. And so it remained a divisional point until later in 1919, when the line was re-merged into one, okay? There were actually two different spurs here, and we're gonna talk about that, okay? When Canadian Government Railways took over, they were planning some big changes to this line. And one of the neat things is I found at Library and Archives Canada, I found actually a map that they had done. So they had basically done, there was a map that was done in 1914. And then they did a revision to it in 1915, and the map shows you a lot of things. So just back over there where the water tank was, just before that, there was a tool house, and then there was a section house. And then right up where you saw those homes there, there was a two-story frame building, and it was known as the pumpman's house. So basically the guy looking after the water tank. Hi, Lynn. Okay. And then just up here, there was a one-story frame building, like literally right here somewhere, right? So in between the water tank and where the station is. So right up in here, there was a one-story frame building. And then, as I mentioned, there was the telegraph office, and then there was the station. So maybe what we'll do, before we go any further, what I'll do is I will show you that map, okay? I'll show you those old maps, and then I'll show you a few other ones, and then I'll show you some timetables as well. So Raith remained a station on the, okay, let me backtrack here. So the station was decommissioned in 1959 and sold, and by that time the water tank, the coal tower, and the Y had been removed, okay? And so Raith remained a station on this line and kept its siding until the line was abandoned in 1994. So let's take a look at all those things. here we go. Let's leave the station area behind, and we're just going to jump ahead over here, and we're gonna show you some more things here. So yeah, and the siding is here, and there would have been another set of tracks, and again, that would have been, so on that 1915 map, you basically see how they were actually going to add multiple sets of tracks, but they only ended up adding one more set of tracks here. So you can see here how we've really leveled out. We're not climbing anymore. And we're really starting to get into this very sort of swampy area. Sorry, just keeping my eyes out, because sometimes you... Sorry, just trying to keep track of my... We've done 15 kilometers. I have an Apple Watch now, and it's trying to be a little bit more accurate, because sometimes I'll jump off the bike and walk around, so the GPS doesn't always record everything super accurately. So we're coming up to the next feature here at Raith. So right here, there was a neat little feature. There was a spur track that linked this line with the Canadian Pacific line. Now, kind of an interesting little story to it. On the timetables, it only shows it active from 1942 to 1952, and then from 1986 to 1993. But if we take a look at those old maps, right? If I show you that 1914 map, it shows the track here. And as I'm going to describe when we kind of follow it, I think what happened is that this track was built when this line was being built, because it would have allowed access to this line, and right, and so probably there was a lot of challenge building the section just to the east of this with all the rock cuts and all the rock work they had. This would have probably been a lot easier to build. So by connecting this, they could have run supplies up the Canadian Pacific track and then basically brought the supplies onto here, and then basically once they had laid some track, they could start running locomotives and cars and things on this line. So we're gonna go take a look at that track. So let's follow the spur. So you can imagine there was a junction point right here, and then the spur. Oh, maybe I missed it a little bit. Maybe the junction point is right here. All right, so let's follow the spur. So you can imagine there was a junction point right here coming in from the grade, and let's follow her through here. So again, this was likely built, I'm guessing here, but it was here in 1914 when they did that mapping of the yard here. So, and it says it was disconnected at the CP end. I'm guessing that this was likely original construction. This was probably built when the line was built to basically allow the transfer of goods. If you watch all the episodes going back to the east, you'll see that there's all kinds of rock work and things like that. So maybe there was, you know, it was slow constructing that section. This section was a lot easier to build. Mind you, you're building through swamp, but relatively speaking, compared to doing all that rock work. So maybe what happened was they started work here, and this was used to allow to basically shunt supplies in off the Canadian Pacific line. Come on, Lynn. So you can see what looks like, I don't know if that's a towel. That's a tie. That's a tie there. And so you can see we're approaching here the current Canadian Pacific Kansas City, formerly Canadian Pacific. This is the Kaministiquia Subdivision, which runs from Thunder Bay to Ignace, which is 147 miles and change, I believe. So again, likely built when the railway line was built, and then disconnected for a period of time. Luna, stay here. Luna, come here. Come here. Likely disconnected here. You can actually see the ties, the indentations from the ties. Right here, right here, here. You can see some pieces of ties. So as I was saying, disconnected when the map was made in 1914, and then as I've shown you, reactivated. There's actually a tie here. Reactivated at several points, and again was probably, yeah, there's ties here. Look, there's all kinds of ties still here on the Canadian Pacific end. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to work our way back to the grade. Speaking of ties, there's a mountain of them just over there. We're going to work our way back to the grade and continue heading west.